Hi, everybody. Good afternoon and welcome to today's Cathedra webinar. We're coming to you live on June 20th. If we have any NLC webinar first timers here today who don't know, our Cathedra webinars get their name from the Greek word for learning. And today you're going to be learning about Native business counseling from Russ Siegel, who's the executive director of the Sequoia Fund. My name is Brooke Warrington. I'm the training development specialist here at the Native Learning Center. We're also thrilled that you could be with us today. If you could read the disclaimer as I read aloud, this webinar provides a summary of fundamental concepts, requirements, and/or procedures within the allotted 90 minutes. The material discussed does not illustrate all possible scenarios that could be applicable. We also have our copyright infringement law printed here. Just a friendly reminder that the materials are protected by copyright, trademark, trade secret, and other intellectual property laws. All right, before we get started, I just want to make you familiar with the environment and how you can interact during the webinar today. So if you look at the top of your screen, you'll see an icon of a hand with a plus sign. If you click on that icon, you can either raise your hand, agree, disagree, show applause, show laughter, or even signal requests like asking the instructor to speak louder or to slow down, please. Your screen should look similar to this graphic here. To the bottom left, you'll see a pod that says Files. Here you'll find a copy of today's slides. It's a PDF version that you can download by hovering over the item and then clicking to save it onto your device. Next box over is labeled Web Links. This is where you'll be able to find a link to our webinar feedback survey, as well as a link to join our email list and connect with us on LinkedIn. Then all the way over to the right, we do have a chat box available. This is how you'll communicate with both the instructor as well as the NLC staff. So if you have any questions during the presentation, we want you to send those in. Just type your message into the space that says type here, and you can either hit enter or you can click the up arrow icon button to submit. We do, of course, encourage class participation, so feel free to write in your questions, write in your comments. And if you're having any kind of tech issues, you could let me know in the chat box as well. Know that most tech problems can be solved by just exiting and re-entering the meeting room. But let's all go ahead and get the chat box going together. Let me know what your name is, where you're joining us from, tribal affiliation, and your work or your role in Indian country. And while you guys are getting the chat box going, I am going to go ahead and hand it off to you, Russ.
Thank you, Brooke. Welcome, everybody. I look forward to spending a little time with you to help you better understand how to counsel small businesses. And I really appreciate today, and I've seen this now many times, that disclaimer about this is not the definitive way to do this. And I think it's especially applicable today. What I'm going to tell you about today is the culmination of about 25 years of experience in working with small businesses. Is it the absolute end-all, be-all? Absolutely not. But I'm going to tell you a few stories and hopefully give you some very approachable ways that you can work with small businesses in your tribe and your community, regardless of your background, regardless of your business experience and your comfort level in offering this service. And I know that in a lot of tribes and a lot of small communities, especially rural communities, resources, well, there are just not that many of them. You go to a bigger city, you've got tons of resources available for small business development and growth. But at least where we are, that's not really the case. And it may be the case where you are as well, that it falls to you or someone in your department to work with small businesses. It may just be that you get tapped to do this because there's no one else available, and you seem like you would be pretty well wired for this type of work. I've been doing this, like I said, for over 25 years. I started numerous businesses before getting into this business. I've been with Sequoia Fund now 15 years. And I can tell you, it's not all been roses. It's there've been a lot of tough times, and I believe that's made me a better counselor today. Wish I didn't have to go through those. Wish I had not gone through those. But here at Sequoia Fund, a lot of the counseling still falls to me. We have other people Around us, we have actually a tribal department that can do small business startup counseling. But sometimes when it's a more challenging client, the business is in a little bit of trouble, maybe there's something that needs a little more advanced touch, that's when they call on me, and I still do some of that. We don't do so much with helping people write business plans anymore, um, because we have to turn around and fund those businesses. But in terms of helping small businesses get where they need to be, um, that there are several people here who can do that. In the more challenging cases, I guess they come to me. So thank you, Lindell and Samantha, for weighing in. Tell me where you're from. If you have any questions as we go along, please go ahead and drop those in the chat. I do want to say, take a moment, download the PDF file down in the bottom left corner. You're going to get all of these slides. That is the entire slide deck today. These are content-rich slides, and I want you to be able to refer back to these. This will become I won't go so far as to say textbook. I don't have that much hubris, but I do want you to be able to refer back to these as you're working with clients so that you can start making your own checklists, so that you can start making your own worksheets and individualizing, personalizing your work with small businesses. So we're going to cover a lot of ground today. Again, I'm going to be moving pretty fast. And if you have questions, go ahead and drop those in the chat. I'll be monitoring that. I'll stop and I'll grab a question every now and then, and we'll take time to do that. Otherwise, I'm going to put the pedal to the metal and fly right through this because, like I said, we've got a lot of slides to get through. I want to make sure that we get to all of this stuff, but we also need to make sure you get the tools that you need and answer the questions that you have. So as you're looking over the discussion outline, I want to tell you how all this started. My very first business, well, I won't go back that far. My very first business I started when I was 10 years old. It wasn't really a business. It was more like a side hustle, but I made some pretty good money. But as I got into my 20s, I started a small business that was both behind the times and well ahead of its time. In the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s, I thought, what this place needs is a diaper service. Well, diaper services were big in the 1950s, so why in the world would I want to start a diaper service in the 1990s? Well, that was about the time when people started thinking about environmentalism. They started thinking about what are we doing to this planet? How much pollution are we producing? How long are these landfills going to hold out before we completely fill them up and we're swimming in garbage? And maybe in the future we have mining companies that mine garbage for the stuff that we threw away decades or centuries ago. So I started to think about those things, and I realized pretty quickly, after having spent some money and gone a ways down the road, that maybe not only are people over diaper services, but maybe they're not quite ready for them yet. So I think if I'd waited until, 2010, things might have been different. But in 1991, not so much. So I learned a lot, but I didn't ask for any help, and no help came to the rescue. It was me against the world. Now, I had a business degree, and so I thought I had it all figured out. Couldn't have been further from the truth. I had started a business not really having an education in small business. I had a business education that taught me how Fortune 500 companies work, but nobody ever sat down with me and went through the things that are unique to small businesses. And so the second business that I started, I thought, well, I know everything now. I've figured out all of the ways this could fail. Surely I'll be fine. And the very first day we opened our door, a SCORE representative walked in. SCORE is a national volunteer organization. They're funded by the Small Business Administration. SCORE stands for Service Corps of Retired Executives. These are people who have owned small businesses. They've worked in corporate America. There's a wide variety of talent there. These are all people who are willing to volunteer their time to help small businesses succeed. And it wouldn't have cost me a thing to talk to the guy. But he walked in. He said, I'm with SCORE. I want to offer my services. It's free. And I'm here to help, whatever you need. And I politely took his card. I shook his hand. And when he walked away, I threw the card in the trash. I said, I don't need this. I have this all figured out. Another mistake. And so in one case, I failed because I didn't know what I didn't know and didn't have any resources available to me that I was aware of to help. In the second case, I did succeed, but I succeeded in spite of myself, not because of what I was doing. I somehow, by hook and by crook, found a way to make it. And it was tough. For years, I wish I had hung onto the card, and I wish I had called the fellow back and said, look, I need help. And it was only after I started counseling small businesses that I realized that's one of the toughest things for a small business owner to do, is admit they need help. So sometimes they're not going to be willing to admit it. Maybe their bank, maybe their CDFI says, if we're going to do this, you need to meet with a counselor. You need to meet with someone who can help you. And so those are the tools I want to give you today. So why do small businesses need counseling? Today, folks, we're going to talk about two different tracks. We're going to kind of keep them on the same path, but we're going to talk about how to deal with new businesses, those who haven't started up yet or in the startup phase. We're also going to talk about counseling businesses that have been around a while, because you're going to get both of those, and they need a little bit different touch. They are going to have some of the same issues, but sometimes those who have been in business for a while, they're going to need some different level of care. And we're going to cover all of that. But just know that no matter what phase of the business people are in, sometimes they make false assumptions and then they follow through on those false assumptions. And when they do that, we can't just fix the issue that they've gotten themselves into. Sometimes we have to go all the way back. We have to tear it down, and we have to break down that false assumption and start from a place of a correct assumption. Let's face it, the stuff that people Google is trash. It's garbage. You could watch 100 YouTube videos today on how to start a business, and about 99 of them are going to be rubbish, because they're going to say things like, all you've got to do is form a corporation and hang out your shingle and make $1 million. And everybody makes it seem so easy. And the reason they do that is because it gets clicks, it gets likes, it gets shares, it gets comments. And on YouTube, even the negative comments put money in their bank account, because comments are comments. And YouTube doesn't distinguish between, this is great content, I loved this, thank you so much for this video, and thumbs down, what a piece of garbage, what a waste of time. It's all the same to them. So the information is quite unhelpful. Sometimes it's even dangerous. I've heard things like, oh, if you're going to start a restaurant, you don't need to be incorporated. Who needs insurance? Just go do it. Make $1 million. We have to not only give people good information, but sometimes we have to combat the bad information people are getting. People don't know what they don't know, just like I didn't know what I didn't know. So I didn't even know what questions to ask. When that man walked in the door with that card and offered his help, one of the issues that I had in asking for help is I just didn't know what to ask for. One half of my brain said, you got this, don't worry about it. And the other half said, where would you even start? Now down here in the bottom corner, I've got a picture of a sweet little baby. Nobody wants to hear that they have an ugly baby. Sometimes we have to see it for ourselves. Nobody wants to hear the truth, but we have to be able to tell them the truth. This is where one of the skills that I think people have to have when they come into this line of work, if you're going to help small businesses, you have to have a measure of kindness about you. You have to have a measure of kindness. And we're going to talk about, later on, we're going to talk about the difference between being nice and being kind. But for now, suffice it to say that kind people are going to point out the flaws. Nice people are just going to avoid the conflict. We have to be able to be kind. Okay. Assumptions that can be dangerous for a small startup. Well, one of the ones that I think I hear the most is everybody will want my product. Everybody will want to stay in my rental cabin. Everybody will need my service. Everybody will be my customer. Really? Really? You sure about that? Um, we hear one of the other extremes. I don't need that much money to start up. Thank you, Dave Ramsey. Dave Ramsey has a huge following out there, and I'm not going to argue with Dave Ramsey because he has shown success. He has shown that there are people out there who cannot control their money. They cannot be disciplined with money, and they need to hear and heed his message. Okay, great. All debt is bad, though, is not the message we need to be conveying to a small business. Because if somebody has, let's say, $20,000 in the bank and they're afraid to borrow the necessary additional $40,000 to start their business, what they're doing is just buying enough rope to hang themselves. They're going to get hurt. Sometimes they need to borrow more money so that they give themselves a clear and long enough on-ramp to success. The other extreme, though, is I think there must be a memo out there somewhere that says if you need to start a business, go ahead and ask for $1 million. We have people walk into Sequoia Fund every week who want to borrow $100,000 to start a business. They've never borrowed that much in their lives. They wouldn't know how to repay $100,000. So sometimes we need to help them whittle that down to a manageable number. I don't need a business plan. I've got everything. And hey, tap on your foreheads, people. Tap on your foreheads. I've got everything right up here. You may have everything right up here. It doesn't mean it's in an order that you can actually use, that you can work from. It doesn't mean that you've asked and answered all the questions around this startup. What we need to do is have it on paper so that someone else can evaluate it, so that someone else can start asking questions. And this is one of my favorites. I know how to do the technical work. I know how to bake pies. I know how to work on cars. I know how to trim trees. I know how to roof houses. I know how to pour concrete. I know how to lay stone. I know how to do this. So I'm sure I'm going to figure the rest of it out. In other words, what I want to do is buy myself a job. Okay, that's fine. Nothing wrong with that. I too have authority issues. But why would you want to buy yourself a job that you know how to do and at the same time buy yourself 14 other jobs you know nothing about that could get you in so much more trouble than if you don't have the proper mixture in your concrete? I mean, if you're pouring a patio, that's one thing. If you're pouring, 13th story of a building or 15th story of a building, that's different. But look, there's so many things in your business that can get you in trouble if you don't know. Well, there are people who believe that if I can do the technical work, the rest is going to be easy. Trust me, the rest of the business is the hardest part. Now, existing businesses make dangerous assumptions as well. They'll say the economy's tough on everybody right now, so we just need to tough it out. Don't need help. I just need to grit it out. Now, the opposite is true. Everything's going so well, I don't need to talk to anybody. I don't need help. We're just going to ride this wave, baby. And both of those are dangerous. Hey, look, I've been doing this for so long. I've been doing this for, let's say, 20 years. I've been doing this for 5 years, 10 years. Why would I change now? Well, because if I keep my head down and I just keep my nose to the grindstone and do it every day, and I don't look up and see where things are headed, my business may be headed for a cliff. Just because it's working today, just because it's worked for 20 years, doesn't mean it's going to work tomorrow. If I just work harder, if I just grit it out, if I don't talk to anybody, if I don't admit that I'm weak, if I don't admit that I don't know what I'm doing, if I just work harder, just work, things are going to get better. Sometimes that works. Most of the time, it doesn't. Because the harder we work, the longer we work, the more burnout we get, the more we hate what we're doing and the less we want to turn things around. And once you start thinking about closing your business, it's almost impossible to unthink that. Things are going so well. Why would I waste time meeting with somebody who does not know my business? Now, this is universally true. I'm just going to go ahead and declare it right now. Universally true that everybody in business thinks their business is different from everybody else's business. Now, you might have a hamburger stand and I've got a taco stand. You don't do what I do. Your business is different. My business is so different from yours. But look, business is business. Cash flow is cash flow. Insurance is insurance. Rent is rent. Your business, their business, is no different from anyone else's business. They don't want to hear that. They want to use that as an excuse that nobody else understands their business. Why would I bother talking to you? At a minimum, now in the startup phase, this is going to be a lot like childbirth. You know, in pregnancy, a woman might meet with her doctor periodically, maybe monthly, and then at some point it goes to weekly, and it may even move to more frequent appointments as they get closer to the due date. Well, a business is the same. If somebody meets with you a year out and they're formulating some ideas, that's great. But they need to start, as they get closer to opening the doors, they need to start meeting with someone more frequently to help keep them on track, keep them focused, make sure they're doing the right things the right way so that they don't go off on a tangent. I'll give you an example. We had a business plan come to us. We got the plan worked out, and we got the loan package approved. Everything looks great. And then they threw a curveball at the last minute. They wanted to add something to the business that costs a lot of money that's totally unrelated to the business. Well, if they had been meeting with an advisor on a weekly or maybe even more frequently, up until the point where we got to the yes on the loan package, then we might have avoided this, but now we've got to back up, and that's going to slow them down. So an annual checkup at a minimum is what I would say most small businesses need to try to keep. If you're going to be healthy, you might want to set an annual checkup with your doctor. You know, just make sure that cholesterol is not creeping up there. Make sure that blood pressure is under control. Make sure your weight's where it needs to be and that you're doing all the things you need to be doing to live longer. The same thing applies to a business. And that's why I've kind of couched this in terms of a medical appointment, because that's something that we all understand. We've all been to the doctor. We know what happens with the doctor visits. And so while I'm certainly not going to propose that we act as doctors, we certainly can be that doctor for our small business clients. We want to strengthen their relationship with a trusted advisor. The longer you see a doctor, the more you trust that doctor. And when you have to go shop for a new doctor, maybe your doctor retires, maybe your doctor moves away, having to shop for a new doctor, maybe you move. Shopping for a doctor is stressful. But if you have someone you trust and that doctor refers you to another doctor, maybe they refer you to a specialist, you're going to trust not only that doctor's word, but you're going to trust the specialist more because you trust the doctor. The same thing applies to small business counseling. If they trust you and you need to send them to a specialist, they will trust that specialist and they will be more likely to listen than if it's just their idea. You want to assess the overall business health. Now, they may come to you with a very specific issue. They may come to you with one that says, maybe we're having a sales problem. And I've got some issues that we're going to work through toward the end of this time together today. And that's going to be one of those. They may come to you with a very specific problem, and you may say, wait a minute. You were talking about a symptom here, but we have a root cause of this that goes much deeper. Let's work on that. You want to evaluate and discuss new ideas. Again, we want to help business owners take advantage of opportunities that they may be missing because they work every day. They put blinders on and they don't have their head up and on a swivel looking for new opportunities. Let's talk about some new ideas. Could you add this? Could you do this? Could this be a revenue opportunity for you? And we want to help them discover other health-related resources. Again, those specialists. Maybe they're ready for a social media manager. Let's outsource that. Maybe they're ready for a graphic designer. Maybe they're ready for somebody to help them create merchandise for their business to sell. Maybe they're ready for somebody who's got expertise in areas that we don't have, web design, things like that. We need to help them discover those other specialists. So let's get into exam prep. Let's say that you get a call, or you've reached out to someone who, or maybe you've had a tribal official contact you. This happens to us, that we'll have somebody call and say, look, my brother-in-law's in business. He really needs help. He's not going to listen to me. Would you just reach out to him, give him a call, and see if you can help him with the business? Okay, sometimes that works. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it has to be their idea to get help. The pain, and let's face it, we're human. All right, so let's start there. We're human, and it is more appealing to us to buy the pill and alleviate the pain than it is for us to live right, do right, and avoid the pain altogether. And so sometimes people don't recognize the pain until it becomes unbearable. But when it comes time to sit down and have that first meeting, there are some things we want these folks to bring to the meeting. So here are some things that I believe we should examine in every sit down that we have with a client. Let's talk about finances, and let's talk about marketing. Now, these are pretty big umbrellas, and we can put a lot of things under these umbrellas. There are going to be other things that we're going to wander into, and that's fine. But mainly, let's stay focused on revenue. Where is your money coming from? What are the trends? How's that going? Are your revenues going up? Are they going down? Are you diversifying your revenue streams? Are you finding new customers in that same revenue stream? Those kinds of questions. What do your expenses look like? How are your expenses trending? Are you spending more on electricity and insurance today than you were a year ago? Maybe as a startup business, you got a quote for your insurance, but when you sat down to sign the paperwork, it was twice as much. What happens with that? Let's talk about these things. Every business has a set of critical numbers. These are what I would call dashboard numbers. Critical numbers are the numbers that, if they are moving in the right direction, the business is moving in the right direction. For a restaurant, for example, this could be gross margins, food cost, table turns. I don't need to know how much money we're spending on toilet paper and paper towels in the bathrooms. If gross margins, if our food costs, if our table turns are moving in the right direction, then we're doing well. I can tell a lot just by looking at that dashboard. What are the trends in this industry? Not just in this neighborhood, not just in this community, not just in your business, but what are the trends in your industry? Sometimes business trends hit us like a wave. Something will start in California, and then all of a sudden it sweeps through Nebraska, Iowa, and then all of a sudden we're feeling it here in North Carolina, or it starts in New York and it works its way down to Texas. Sometimes trends, because they move very fast these days, they get started and they spread by social media, they get spread by trade associations, or sometimes just customers. I own some Airbnbs, and one of the trends right now is that there are actually groups out there on Reddit, on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. There are groups teaching people how to scam the system and get free stays at Airbnbs by harming, often lying to harm, the Airbnb hosts. So we see these trends all the time, and you've got to help your business owners be aware of what kind of the trends are out there, good and bad. How's your pricing? Is your pricing okay? You mean through all this inflationary period, you haven't raised your prices? Well, what is that doing to your margins? No wonder you're working so many hours. No wonder you never see your family, and all of a sudden your kid went from diapers to driver's license, and you didn't see that kid. So these are all things that we want to focus on. Marketing, we want to focus on their product. Now, this could also be their service. Is the product or service still relevant? Does it need to be tweaked in any way? Is it still desirable? Are you offering any guarantees? How are you differentiating your product? Those types of things. People, do you have the right people on the bus? I talked with a business just this morning who is now 9 years in business. And for the first 3 years, they really struggled. They struggled mightily with just getting the right people on the bus. And they had so much turnover. And this is a little hamburger stand, and they tried to open for breakfast and people didn't show up, and they couldn't open the business. And yeah, for a solid 3 years, it was just a nightmare. Now they're looking at expanding the business and they're making great money. But they had to work out some people issues. And if they've got the right people on the bus, that's good, because now we just go out and we find more people with that same work ethic, with that same drive, with that same motivation. We want to find people who look like this people that we have, and let's get more of them. How's your location? Is there road construction that's going to be happening this summer that's going to really hurt your business? Was there a landslide last fall that hurt your business? Last spring? What is your location going to be bypassed by a highway? Maybe you're getting more foot traffic. Maybe you need to gear up because there's going to be more traffic by your place. Maybe your rent is going to go up. So again, these are all, just big picture focus areas that we want to look at. And what are your processes? Are you getting better? Are you working harder? Are you waking up every morning and reinventing the wheel? What's going on there? So these are the big umbrellas that we're going to throw a lot of things under, and how are we going to be examining those? So you're going to ask people to bring some things to the first meeting. If they don't have these things, well, especially a business plan, then your first meeting is going to be talking about how do we put together a business plan? But if they can send you any of this beforehand so that you can get a little bit of background, fantastic. Look for the business plan. And what you're going to examine there is, do they have a well-developed concept? If not, Native Learning Center, we do this quite frequently. We do how to write a business plan webinars, and we can get into that. I highly recommend that you sign up for the next one that's coming around, whether it's me teaching it or someone else. Understand the components of a business plan, understand how that works. There are a lot of good resources out there on how to write a business plan, but you want to find out, do they understand their business, their industry, and all of the different roles they're going to play, not just the technical work. If their business plan is, I'm going to work on cars and I'm going to do transmission work, and the whole business plan is about how they're going to do transmission work. That's not really a business plan. Can they bring a resume? Can they get you a resume so that you can look at their skills, certification, education, and anything else that's going to help you have a comfort level that they are going to have some measure of success? Now, if you look at a resume and they've had a different job every 6 months for the last 6 years, they are probably not going to have the grit to maintain business. They're not going to stick with it. They're not going to stay in there. They're missing that, what I call the gotta wanna factor. And gotta wanna is somebody who's going to get up every morning and they want it no matter what happens. And they're going to take that hill. They're going to overcome that obstacle. And if you look at a resume and you don't see that, it might be an opportunity to try to talk somebody off that ledge and help them not start that business. Oh, and by the way, your tribe may have measurements that they want you to adhere to. They may have metrics that they want you to hit. They may have a certain number of businesses that they want to see started as a result of your business counseling. And I'm here to tell you that if you can stop people from starting a business when it is not in their best interest, that's a positive outcome. Please do it. It took a long time for folks to get used to the notion that not starting a business is a positive outcome of counseling. You want to see their last 3 bank statements. Look, I can make financial projections look great. I can make money look any way I want to make it look, but it's hard to hide anything that is historically in my bank statements. If I look at somebody's bank statements and I see that they're mismanaging money, they're probably going to do the same thing in their own business. If they're not balancing their checking account, if they don't have a handle on how much money they have, if they consistently run $23 in their bank account, and that's as much as they ever have, they're probably not going to do a great job at managing their business money. You also want to take a look at their last 3 years, if possible. If you can only get 1 year, that's fine. But look at 3 years of tax returns. Now, this is personal and business. If it's a business, you want to get their last 3 years so you can see, is there a pattern of growth? But if it's a personal return, have they had income growth? Are they making more money? Or are they pretty much satisfied with making less? Did they have their returns filed on time? Were they professionally prepared? Those kinds of things. You're looking for little clues that give you insight into how this business is going to be operated. An existing business, you want that business plan because you want to see, where did you think you were going to be and where are you now? The vast majority of the time, people write a business plan, they go get the money, they start the business, and that business plan gathers dust on a shelf, or it ends up in the bottom drawer of a filing cabinet, and they never look at it again. What you want to see is, are they using this to guide their business? Are they actually using the plan? You want to see 12 months of cash flow. You're going to look for trends. Is this a seasonal business? Did they have some spikes? Did they have some dips? Is there evidence that the owner is siphoning money off the business? Owner fraud is a real thing. It's not the same as an employee stealing from the business, but it certainly could be. But if it's a mom and pop business and mom and pop are using money out of the cash drawer to buy their groceries on the way home, that's owner fraud. They're stealing from themselves and they're stealing from the business's future. And if that's the case, we got to fix that before we can fix anything else. Again, look at the last 3 bank statements. They're going to give us a more real picture than the P&L statements. Do they match up to the cash flow statements? Is there something running through the bank account that we're not seeing reflected on the financial statements? That's a red flag. Does it look like your client is reporting everything? If you look at that tax return, is there something that's being reported that shouldn't be? Is there something that's not being reported that they should report? Maybe they're not tracking their mileage. Well, I just go to the bank. I just go to the post office once a day. Okay, well, that's 3 miles to the post office and the bank and 3 miles back. That's 6 miles a day, 30 miles a day times 67 cents a mile times how many days, how many weeks a year? Okay, that starts to add up. We want to help people take advantage of those opportunities. If it's a new business, here's some things that you're going to want to bring to the meeting. You're going to want to learn something about that industry so that you're not just guessing at things. Now, I have worked with hundreds of businesses across a multitude of industries, but I wanted to let you know there's a little tool out there, and maybe you've heard of it. It's called ChatGPT. I've been using this a lot. I actually taught a course on it last week to native CDFIs, and I'm working with a couple of businesses right now. And I said, well, if I put my newbie hat back on, and if I say, I don't know anything about this business, how could I learn something about one of these businesses? How can I make sure I'm asking the right questions? And so I went into ChatGPT, and here's the prompt. I just want to read this to you really quickly. Here's the prompt that I put in ChatGPT. I said, you are a seasoned restaurateur with many years of successful ownership and operation of restaurants in various types and in diverse demographic and economic settings. I'm a business counselor and small business lender who will be working with a small walk-up hamburger stand that has 9 successful years of profitable history. They're seeking to open a new location in a nearby town. Give me a list of questions I should ask in order to provide a thorough level of assistance. Be sure to include esoteric, easily overlooked, or often forgotten questions that will help keep them on a path to greater success. And it took about 4 seconds for ChatGPT to give me 20 questions in 8 categories. And even if I know nothing about the restaurant industry, I can sit down and ask these questions, and I can help people move in the right direction. You see, being a good small business counselor is not about knowing all the answers. You do not have to have all the answers. In fact, it's very liberating to admit that you don't have all the answers. And one of our mottos around here is, I don't know. Let's find out. You don't have to have the answers, but what I want you to do is start equipping yourself with the questions. And I've already asked a couple of those questions. I hid them, but I've already asked them. One of those questions was, really? Really? That's a very short question. It's just one word with a question mark behind it. But what it says is, are you sure about that? Have you done your homework? Can you show your homework? Can you give me evidence of that? Can you show me proof that what you're saying is true? Can you show me proof that what you believe will actually happen? There's a lot in that. And the other is, why? Why? So again, you don't have to have all the answers. You just have to have some good questions. You want some information on their competitors. Now, this is another area where a lot of times, especially because we don't just cover the Cherokee Qualla Boundary area, we cover a 7-county area. So there might be somebody in an outlying county who wants to start a business, and they're going to come in and ask questions about it. I need to know who their competitors are. So I may go to Google. I may go to ChatGPT. I may call the Chamber of Commerce. There's a good chance that a new business is going to ignore a major direct or indirect competitive threat. They might say, Russ, my lasagna is the best in the world. I'm starting an Italian restaurant. It's going to be the best lasagna in the world. Okay. I love your lasagna. It's great lasagna. I've had it. It's delicious. But what if I'm tired? I just got off from work. My wife's out of town. I don't want to cook, but I don't want to go out to eat. Maybe I'm going to stop by the grocery store and I'm going to pick up a frozen lasagna. No, it's not as good as yours, but it's quick. I can take a shower while it's in the microwave and there's dinner. That's an indirect competitor that I'll guarantee you nobody's thinking about. We want to have open ears and closed mouth. My mom always told me, I used to get in trouble all the time for talking. My mother used to tell me, God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth because he wants you to listen twice as much as you speak. It took me years to actually buy into that notion, but she was right. Listen more than you talk. Listening is going to help you build credibility with your client. Just listening, nodding, taking notes. If you say, I don't know the answer to that, let me write that down. I'll get back to you. Let's go find that answer together. Those are the kinds of things that help you build credibility. Think about the times that you've sat down to talk to a know-it-all. When you sit down with a know-it-all, you start to lose credibility in them. You start to lose the notion that maybe they do know what they're talking about. No, if they know everything, they probably don't know as much as they let on. Now, you also want to arm yourself with information on how to help people get in contact with trade associations. Well, you can Google their industry and the word trade association. That's going to help you find those trade associations. Trade associations are great sources of information, industry data, trends, you name it. You want to have a list of accountants. We don't do accounting for people. And I don't give them my favorite accountant because they may not like my favorite accountant. I want to find somebody they can work with. So I'm going to give them a shopping list. Here are 3 to 5 accountants that some of our clients use and have spoken highly about. Here are some attorneys that we recommend. We're a native CDFI. We love to lend money, but if somebody walks in with an 800 credit score, we really need to send them to a bank because our capital is going to be reserved more for the people who have a good idea and really bad credit. We want to send people who are bankable to the banks. But I also need to know, in our area, are there banks that work with businesses like yours? Are there government agencies? Now, I've mentioned one. It's not really a government agency, but they're funded by the government, and that's SCORE, Service Corps of Retired Executives. You might have a small business development center near you. If you're close to a university or a community college, I'll bet there's a small business development center or something very similar in that college. Or they have a couple of professors in their business department who are well known for helping small businesses locally. They work through the Chamber of Commerce or through the tribe. look to those educational institutions. You might have some local experts. Here, we try to tap into people who have been in business for ages because they've seen it all, they've done it all, and they can share with other people. If it's an existing business, what you want to bring is some cost data, some price data. Now, again, I'm gonna differentiate here. Price is what they charge. Cost is what they pay for the things they buy. You want to look at their margins. Are they in line with their competitors? Are their costs under control? Do you maybe need to recommend they increase prices? Are there some things that they need to quit buying? Maybe they need to source a new supplier. You want to take a look at their website and their social links. This little business that I mentioned before, the burger stand that's expanding, for the first couple of years, their social media was limited to, we're out of beef, we're not going to open today. Now, that was the entire post on Facebook. Or, we don't have anybody to work breakfast this morning, so we're going to open at 11:30 for lunch. But that's not social media marketing. That's public service announcements. But you need to look at everything they're putting out into the public with a customer's eye view and give them feedback, because they're looking at it as the person who paid for it. It has a halo effect. But if you're able to look at it objectively, you can give them some good feedback on what might need to be changed. And you really don't have to be an expert on that. If you shop online, if you go to any website, you're going to know what you like, what catches your eye, what draws your attention. Give them some feedback on that. Do they have an organizational chart? Do they have the right people on the bus? Are they poised for growth? Are they ready to do this? Do they have good hiring and training practices? Or do they just walk around with a mirror and they hold it up to people's face, and if they breathe on it and there's fog, they're hired? And a lot of small businesses are doing that. So again, we want to help the business not as it is today, but we want to help it get ready for the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years. Finally, you want to talk to the owner about their personal life. Are they taking vacations? Do they have other pursuits? Do they have a hobby? You know, if they used to play golf and play guitar, and they've not picked up a guitar in 2 years, and they've never chased that little white ball around the golf course since they started the business, maybe they need to take a day and just go do that. If they're not taking care of themselves, they're not going to be any good to anybody. And they're not going to be able to take care of their business. A lot of business owners pride themselves on working 50, 60 hours a week. Well, Stanford University just came out with a study not too long ago that said productivity drops sharply at 50 hours a week. Whether you own the business or not, you hit 50 hours a week, your productivity drops precipitously. And it falls off the cliff entirely at 55 hours a week. There's not really any reason for anybody to work in their business more than 55 hours a week, because they're not doing anything. They're just wandering around like the Walking Dead, spinning their wheels. Talk to them about their relationships. Ask them, is everything okay at home? I don't want to pry into your marriage, but if you and your spouse are not talking because things are bad with the business, maybe I can point you to another type of counselor. Let's get you some help there, because that stress at home is going to weigh on the business, and vice versa. I always encourage people, and it took me years to figure this out, because I too, when I first started, was one of those guys who thought I had it all figured out. You don't have to have all the answers. And if you think you have all the answers, you're going to jump right in with a prescription. Let's say you go to the doctor and you say, "Doctor, this hurts. Whatever this is, this hurts." And your doctor says, "Well, take these pills, call me in the morning. Take 2 aspirin, call me in the morning," I think is the old saying. Okay. That's not really fixing the problem. That's being prescriptive. Doctors today are going to be diagnostic. And that's where we need to be as counselors. We want to get to the bottom of things. We want to ask questions. If we're diagnostic, we're asking a lot of questions. Well, when did it start hurting? Does it hurt when you do this, or only when you do that? All right, we're going to ask a lot of questions about the small business. When did you start to see this expense rise? When did you start to see your customer numbers fall off? Let's talk about what events precipitated that. What happened around that time? What happened around that time that you started to see your revenues increase, but your profits were going down? Start asking a lot of questions. If you're prescriptive, you're just going to assume that you know what's going on, and you're going to throw some pills at it. If you're diagnostic, you're going to look through the documents, just like a doctor is going to look over the X-ray, the MRI, the reports, maybe the records from last year. What were your vital signs last year? What was your cholesterol last year? We're going to look over the documents. If you're prescriptive, who needs the tests? I can tell what's wrong with you. Just take this. Just do this. Diagnostic, we're going to look for patterns. We're going to look for patterns. Does this happen when this other thing happens? Does this happen the first week of the month? Does this happen the third week of the month? Does this happen only when this happens in town? Are there codependent events? Does your business depend on powwows and other tribal events, art markets and things like that? Does your business depend on the tribe's travel and tourism department bringing people to town? Or could you survive if you couldn't ride those coattails? Prescriptive, we're just going to say this is the course of action. Just go do this. Bulk up your social media. See what happens. If we're diagnostic, we're going to drill down to the root problem. We're going to get all the way down to it. And we're going to talk about some of those here in just a moment again. If you're prescriptive, you don't need to do that because you're pretty confident in what you're telling people. If you're diagnostic, you're going to ensure that your prescription is not contraindicative. All right, I'm going to talk about that in just a second. If you're prescriptive, you're going to see that client again because they're either going to be in the same condition or worse. Things are not going to get better. What we want to make sure that we do is we don't give somebody a cure that is worse than the disease. I don't want to tell somebody to go out and spend money on a solution when spending money is the last thing they need to do. There are certain drugs that you can't take together. Individually, they work. One might get rid of a headache and one might make your stomach feel better. Take them together, you're going to end up in the hospital. Depends on your body chemistry, depends on your history, depends on the drug combination. It depends on a lot of things, and that's what contraindicative means. If they're contraindicated, that means they don't go together. If you've got somebody who's struggling with an issue and your prescription is you need to go out and buy a $12,000 software package. Well, if they do that, are they going to be ready to run that software package? Are they prepared to use it? Can they integrate it with everything else they have? Can they implement that? Or are they just going to throw $12,000 in the garbage? With every business that we deal with, again, we want to check those vital signs, because this year we want to see, was it better than last year? Next year, is it better than it was this year? So when it comes to financial health, this is one of those big umbrellas that we talked about. We're going to look at their goals versus actual. We're going to look at year to year. We're going to look at their business to industry. Now, if there's a new business that they've not started yet, they may not know what their revenue per employee is going to be. They may not know if it's good. They may not know what their revenue per square foot is. But let's say I'm going to start a little hardware store. I'm going to start a hardware store that we're going to sell some plants. We're going to sell some outdoor things, maybe some home improvement stuff. I'm not going to be as big as Home Depot, Lowe's, Menards, any of these other big companies. But what I can do is I can compare my little bitty store and my sales per square foot, and I can compare that ratio to the big companies. So my sales, that's a tiny number when you look at the billions in revenue that those big stores have. But when we start looking at ratios, maybe my projections are on target, that my sales per square foot, my sales per employee, my profit per employee, all those things are starting to be in line. Well, if that becomes my goal, I have something to shoot for. So it works with both existing businesses and with new businesses. Do I have diverse streams of revenue? Now, there's a fine line between having diverse revenue streams, which means if one of them suffers, it doesn't pull everything else down, and trying to do too much. Okay, you can diversify your revenue streams, which means you may do oil changes. You also may do car detailing. You may also do some minor repairs. You may also like change out headlights, do fuel additives and things like that. But if you started changing out engines and transmissions and painting cars, that could be a little bit too far afield. You want diverse revenue streams, but you don't want to go so far that it scares people. The word I'm looking for here is, and I'm going to put it down in the chat for you, is adjacencies. Adjacencies. Does the business you're working with have streams of revenue that are adjacent to each other? Do they fit together? Or have they opened up a hot dog stand that also does mental health counseling? Two very different things that maybe now people don't trust your counseling, or your hot dogs could be really, really bad. We don't know. What are the industry conditions? Then this again is gonna involve you doing some homework so that you understand where the industry is going, where it is now, so that you can have a conversation with these folks. How has the economy affected revenues? Is everything moving upward? Is it moving downward? I mean, even newspapers are trying to get out of the newspaper business, right? How financially healthy are your customers? If you're selling luxury cars to people who can no longer afford them, yes, your business is going to suffer. These are all questions that we need to be asking. On the expense side, again, actual versus goals. Are your costs increasing? How are your clients reacting to these cost increases? Are they trying to hold the line and they don't, oh, I've just got a big heart for my customers, I don't want to charge them more, they can't afford it? Well, do your customers want you to be in business the next time they need you? I used to have a painter who only charged $15 an hour, and he did some really great work. And I loved the guy. I wanted to hire him for everything, not because he was cheap, but because he was a great guy. And I said, Robert, you need to charge me more. He said, oh, why? People can't afford that. I said, well, here's the thing. If I need to hire you for a paint job and you're out of business, I've got to go hire somebody else. And I don't like anybody else. I want you to. So I talked him into raising his prices. And his reaction was, everybody who buys from me is just like me. If I couldn't afford this, nobody else can afford this. And we have to help people understand that they are not their customers. Their customers are very different. And so just like Taylor Swift makes a lot more money than the people who go see her concerts, we have to assume that our customers have enough money to afford us. Maybe they have more money than we do. They're not broke. They're not poor. We need to make sure that we can charge what we need to charge. How does this affect that product and service mix? Maybe we're selling the wrong thing. Maybe we need to make a change for a little bit until things turn around. Are they locked into a supplier because, oh, well, this is old so-and-so and he's been a friend of mine for years? Well, so-and-so is robbing you blind. He's not giving you a good deal. He's not delivering on time. He's not taking care of you. He is using you. Sometimes they need an outsider to help them see that. Again, nobody wants to hear that they have an ugly baby, but that's one of those ugly babies. We need to help people see that there may be a different way. Are the suppliers healthy? If you've thrown all your eggs in one basket and you've got a sole source supplier and that supplier is having financial difficulties and we don't know it, what happens the day they go out of business? Now you're stuck looking for a new supplier. Maybe you can find a supplier that's a little bit closer to avoid transportation issues, to avoid increasing transportation costs. You might have one supplier that a truck load is going to cost $16,000 to get that load to its destination. You find another supplier that's a little closer. Now you're looking at $4,000, $6,000, $8,000 to get that load to its destination. Those are all things that we have to help people see. Don't necessarily tell them you need to use a different supplier. We have to help them see that maybe the baby they have is not as pretty as they thought it was. we have to help them understand what their competitors are doing. And sometimes that means we just ask, what are your competitors doing? How are they reacting to these situations? How are they reacting to this economy? What steps are they taking? And we see people time and time again going out of business because they're either looking at their competitors and saying, no, I'm not going to do that because I'm not going to raise prices. I'm not going to change suppliers. I'm not going to stay open later. I'm not going to be open on Saturdays. I'm not going to do this or that. Or they're just putting their head in the sand and ignoring everything. With critical numbers, every business has internal KPIs. These are key performance indicators. Key performance indicators. Have they looked at benchmarking their business to other similar businesses? Are they using best practices? Are they setting performance goals? Are they getting their employees to help set performance goals? Because time and time again, when employees help set those goals, they're going to help reach those goals. If you set the goal and tell your employees to go do it, they're less likely to do it. Do they have a set of key drivers to focus on? It's that, what I was talking about before. Your critical numbers, do they have that gross margin target? Do they have a revenue target? Or are they just trying to look at how much did we spend in paper clips last month? Paperclip cost went up 37 cents last month. That's ridiculous. Who cares? Who cares? Let's look at those big numbers that drive the business. Are they looking at industry comparables? Industry comps are ratios that they can track to compare themselves. Like I was saying before, my little hardware store may never be as big as Lowe's or Home Depot, but if I start to look at these comps, I can see, am I doing the right things? We have to, in some form or fashion, help small businesses learn to look at data around their business. If we don't, they're going to stay stuck on baking pies, fixing cars, mowing lawns, trimming trees, roofing houses, pouring concrete, whatever it is. We have to help them become more data aware, more aware of what's going on around them, so that they can make good decisions about their business. We have to help them see market trends. Again, this is why you do probably want to, at some point, suggest that people pony up the money and join a trade association or some sort of business association so they can tap into industry knowledge. Economic trends. If you go to Equifax, if you go to American Express, if you go to their websites, look for webinars. These big banks, big credit card companies, credit bureaus, excuse me, let me hydrate here a second. These companies have monthly or quarterly webinars that are free. You sign up for it. What it does is it gives you an unbiased, big picture view of the economy. Where are things now? Where did we expect it to be? Where are things going? It has nothing to do with the auto repair business, but it has everything to do with business. So if you can either tap into these, or if your clients can tap into these, learn something. Are they reading about the economy? Are they keeping up with things? Or do they get their news from TikTok? Okay. Again, more informed clients are going to make better business decisions. Is your client set up for an opportunity or a disaster? Sometimes one event can be both an opportunity or a disaster for your clients. Are they keeping an eye on industry trends? Are they preparing for risks? Are there opportunities out there that they need to take advantage of? Maybe everybody else is worried about this big thing that's happening, and it's an opportunity for you. I'm going to go back to the very client that I was talking about this morning. And that is, they're looking to expand in an area where there is getting ready to be major road construction. There are a lot of businesses relocating off this road. Everybody sees it as a disaster. But that road construction is going to put a second access point for their new location. It's going to give people two ways to get in and out of their business. It's going to put them at a red light where that business had never been at a red light before. They're moving the red light. This is a huge opportunity for them. And we talked about how, this is devastating for several businesses around them, but it's a great opportunity for them. We have to be prepared for those things. Now, remember I said sometimes we have to break down those assumptions. We have to go right back to the core. We can't just fix the problem that we see. We have to tear everything down and start over. And sometimes when people come to us and they say, my pricing is wrong, or we discover that their pricing is wrong, sometimes they started with faulty assumptions on their pricing, and their pricing has been bad from the beginning. We can't fix that dent. That's not going to buff out. We got to take that whole body off the frame. We got to straighten the frame. We got to start all over. So we've got to go back to the beginning, and we've got to make sure that their pricing structure is properly built from the beginning. Do they know what their break-even point is? Did they take it into account? Maybe their pricing, they love their pricing. Their customers love their pricing. It's so cheap, everybody's buying it, but it's driving them out of business. Do they have a pricing strategy? Or are they just kind of blowing in the wind? Whatever the competition's doing, that's what I'm going to do. Is it designed to optimize their revenue? Is there more than one pricing tier? Do they have a silver, gold, platinum level? Do they have do they have different things that people can take advantage of? Maybe step up to a different price tier. Do they offer bundle pricing? Maybe I've got some stuff from last year that I need to move. I'm going to bundle it with the new stuff this year, and I'm going to sell it all together. It's not going to go away for free, but I'm going to give it people such a good deal that they're going to say, yeah, I'll take that whole bundle of 3 items rather than just buying this one thing. I see a lot of companies out there charging time and materials. Time and materials. I promise you, folks, your doctor is not charging for time and materials. Your doctor is charging for the value they offer. There are a lot of businesses out there, attorneys, CPAs. They're charging based on the value they offer, not on time and materials. It's not on how many copies they make for you. We need to help change our clients' mindsets that maybe there's a different way to do it. Again, remember, I'm always going to default to, I don't have all the answers. So I'm not going to say we need to switch you from time and materials to value-based pricing. What I might say is this the best way to price? And if you say yes, can you show me your reasoning for that? Can you prove that this is the best way to price? Because if it's not, would you be willing to look at alternative ways of pricing your products and services? Okay, now we might get somewhere. Are they offering the right products, the right services? Do they offer those adjacencies that I mentioned? That's a huge word. If people trust me to do this, they may trust me to do that. But then I go a little bit farther, they may not trust me to do that other thing. Do they offer a guarantee? Are they warrantying their products, their services? If this is not right, we'll come back out, we'll do it again, we'll make it right. If nobody else is doing that, that's a huge selling point. Are they visible? Can people see them? Are they spending too much for a location that they don't need? If you're working with a plumber who would do just fine with a van, a laptop, and a cell phone, why does that plumber now need an expensive storefront in a shopping center? When they're never there, they're always out under somebody's crawl space or in the basement or digging in the yard. They're under the sink. Are they overspending? How can we help them see that? How can we help them move away from that? Are they ready to move up? Just like that theme song to the Jeffersons, moving on up. Are they ready to get out of that spare bedroom and move into a commercial space and get legit and be a quote unquote real business? Again, these are just all questions that we want to ask, that we want to be thinking about as we work with our clients. Are they talking to the right people? We have people come in and say, well, I don't know what's happening. I'm spending $300 a month in the newspaper and I'm not getting any traction. Okay. Do your customers read the newspaper? If you're selling to Gen Z, if you're selling to 23-year-olds or whatever, no, they're not reading the newspaper. Even if that newspaper has an online version, they're not reading the newspaper. So we need to go to where they are. Are your messages pulling customers' motivational triggers? Now, what I mean by this is we all have motivational triggers. Some businesses, it's about luxury. Some businesses, it's about just being the cool. You've got the cool thing. It's the cool brand. Got to have it. For some, it's about security, longevity. I know that if I buy these Carhartt jeans, they're going to last forever. I know if I buy that Carhartt jacket or these Ariat boots, they're going to last forever. I don't know if I buy these Birkenstock sandals, I can resole them 1,000 times. What is that motivational trigger that people are looking for? And are these businesses pulling that motivational trigger? And one of the big questions I always ask clients is, do you own your virtual real estate? When we talk about marketing, a lot of people want to go the free route. Oh, I'm going to use Facebook. I'm going to use X, the artist formerly known as Twitter. I'm going to use Instagram. I'm going to use TikTok. I'm going to use Snapchat, this and that. Okay, that's fine. All of those are somebody else's backyard. Mark Zuckerberg owns Facebook and Instagram. If you break the rules in his backyard, he's kicking you out of his backyard. He's going to send you home. What happens to all of your customer base then? What happens to all the people who have liked, followed, shared when you're not there anymore? People need to be able to own their virtual real estate. They need a website. They need a place where nobody can kick them out. And we've talked about getting the right people on the bus, but again, this is one of the reasons we want to look at a resume. How are their management skills? Is this business owner interested in continuous improvement? Do they want to build their leadership skills, or are they just fine to burn through employees and just keep hiring somebody else, making it hard on themselves unnecessarily? Do they have a process for doing all of this? Or are they just getting up every morning saying, I need to go hire somebody else. How am I going to do that today? Do they have written job descriptions and an organizational chart? Are they prepared for the next position they need to hire? Or are they trying to find another Mike because Mike was a great guy? Mike did a lot of things, and we've not really written those things down, and we're not really trying to find somebody else who can do those things. I'm trying to find another Mike because Mike was a great guy. Okay, that's a tough way to go. And yet, every single day, we see business owners trying to go out and clone Mike. Now, do they have processes, or are they just reinventing the wheel? Are they evaluating their performance and the employee performance? Are they ready to grow, or do they want to stay small? If I have an ice cream shop and I've got 2 teenage employees working with me, they're there every afternoon after school and things are going great. I may not want to pursue world domination. I may just want to work in my ice cream shop. And that's a conscious decision. But how am I going to stay small if there's a line around the block to get my ice cream? And now, instead of selling ice cream and making people happy, people are really upset that they're standing out in 104-degree weather trying to get in here to get an ice cream cone. Again, just because it's good today doesn't mean it's going to be good tomorrow. We have to get people to open up. We have to get people talking about what's going on with their business. Have there been any changes since the last time you were in? Now, this question works whether they were in last year, last week, or yesterday. Any changes since the last time you were in? This is one that your doctor asks you. It's an important question. What they tell you might not be in the financials. It might not be in the bank statements. It might not be in the business plan. Get them to talk about their observations. What are you seeing out there? Tell me about how things are going. This is part of that casual conversation where people are going to tell you things that you need to know that are not going to come up in any other form. Listen for things that are going to give you a clue into something else that you might see in another report. And then listen for things that might help you tap into opportunities, fears, concerns. So let's talk about a few of these. I told you we're going to talk about some real world problems here. And clients sometimes will tell you what they think rather than what they know. And we get we tend to cement ideas in our brain because we've seen it once, it becomes a trend, or because somebody has told us what they saw, we believe it without question. Someone might come in and say, we've got a sales problem. Or they might say, customer service is terrible. My people need training. They may believe it because they heard it, not because they saw it. Steve is a bad manager. Steve is a bad manager who's driving away employees with his attitude, and our customers can't afford our price. Again, people make bad assumptions, and then they act on those bad assumptions. The bad assumption might be a good assumption, but until we test it, we just don't know. So let's talk about the sales problem. When they come in and they say, I have a sales problem, what leads you to believe this? This is a diagnostic approach. What leads you to believe this? What evidence do you have that this is so? Well, my sales are going down. Okay. Well, we're going to get to another level here in just a second. Hold that thought. For the customer service problem, remember the question was, our customer service is terrible. My people need training. Tell me what you've observed that causes you to say this. Maybe you had one customer complaint and now everybody's guilty. That's not the case. Tell me what you've observed. Steve is a bad manager. Tell me about Steve's background and how you trained him. I have a philosophy, folks, that if you have a bad employee, don't blame the employee. Don't blame Steve. Steve was either like that when you hired him and you didn't spot the deficiencies, or you made him that way. There's been something about your work culture that has turned Steve sour to this position, and maybe he's just cruising. Maybe he just wants to go home and pursue his hobby or his side hustle. Tell me what you've observed Steve doing and saying that illustrates this. Again, we're going to make people show their homework. We're asking questions. We're following up. So far, we've not given them any solutions at all. There are certain points along this conversation, along these tracks, where people might say, you know what, I've actually never seen Steve do anything that would indicate he's a bad manager, but somebody told me this. Okay, now we're getting somewhere. Customers can't afford our prices. Tell me what some of them have said about you, about your prices. Tell me what some of them have said. If you just assume that people are not coming in because your prices are too high, but you haven't asked them, again, that could be a bad assumption. On the sales problem, more diagnosis. This may be a symptom of an underlying problem. Maybe this is a symptom of an insufficient value proposition. We've not convinced people that we're worth paying that price. A sales problem might be that we've not trained our sales staff, and our sales staff have a bad attitude, or they're curt, they're short, they're sharp with customers, and they're not empathetic. The customer service problem may be an indicator or maybe indicative of a training issue. You know, maybe we've told employees we're going to hold them responsible for certain things, but we're not going to give them the authority to do anything about it. So again, when we start to get people to show their homework, we might find that there's a deeper issue. Steve may not be a bad manager, but maybe somebody has a personality conflict or an issue with Steve, and they complain constantly about Steve. Until I observe Steve, I don't know. Unaffordable prices could just be an excuse to keep prices artificially low, because if I keep prices low, I don't have to listen to my customers complain. And I don't have to try to do anything to communicate why I'm worth raising prices. We see this in childcare facilities. We see this in grocery stores. We see this everywhere. So it's not, again, somebody's going to come in and say, my business is different. No, it's not. The number one killer of small businesses is not lack of planning or funding, but owner ego. Dr. Jim Carlin, Dr. Joanne Carlin, husband and wife, got together and put together a big study years ago looking at what are the main reasons businesses fail. And owner ego was by far the number one reason. So what does that include? Owner ego includes the owner fraud that I mentioned before. Well, it's my business. I can do with it what I want. If it's my money, it's in the cash register. If I need to go buy groceries on the way home today, I'll just take a couple $100 out of the register. I'll go do it. It's my business. Owner ego is that little voice in the back of people's head says, that's not really the reason. You don't have to tell anybody that. You don't owe anybody that. You're smarter than that. You can do whatever you want. You can handle this however you want to. Just fire that employee. They're no good. It doesn't matter that you haven't observed Steve doing anything. Just because your favorite employee told you Steve is bad, get rid of Steve. Those are the things that happen to manifest that owner ego. Are your clients telling you everything? Are they telling you the truth? Just like when you go to the doctor is going to screen you for certain things. They're going to do a cholesterol check at certain ages. They might do additional tests that are not that pleasant but necessary. And we're going to ask them for some specific industry-specific issues. Are there industry-specific issues? Well, I was just reading an article yesterday that your industry is undergoing this change, that there's this big shift. Are you aware of it? What are you doing? Maybe there's location-specific issues. I hear that there's road construction coming your way. How have you prepared for that? Oh, well, I haven't even thought about it. It's fine. It's not for another year. Really? A year moves pretty quick. I mean, there's one of my old favorite sayings is the days are long, but the years are short. And they may not have as much time to prepare as they think. Are there some owner-specific issues? Are there things going on in their lives that they need? We have this a lot of times with family businesses, with businesses that are owned by spouses. They'll come in, and part of the reason the business is failing is because their marriage is suffering. Their marriage is failing. They fight all the time, and they can't keep it out of the workplace. That's not for me to fix. I can make a recommendation that maybe they need a different type of counseling before we address the business issues. If you are going to do this, you need to have certain qualities. You need to be empathetic. You're probably, in a lot of occasions, you're not going to be catching people at their finest moment. And empathy builds trust. You need to have high standards. You need to be clear that, just like any good coach, if you want to perform at a higher level, you need to accept this counsel. You need to accept this coaching. You need to do what I'm telling you because this works. And even if that counseling is to do nothing different, it needs to be evidence-based. People will smell fake it till you make it from a mile away. You need to use evidence-based best practices. And if you don't know what those are, that's extra homework for you. But it's your job to help clients find those resources, find those answers. The fallacy of understanding is that I'm in this job, so I have to know all this stuff. Sometimes you have to modify your prescription based on new evidence. Well, last week we were talking about this. You didn't mention this other thing. Now that changes everything. We have to help our clients stay healthy between visits, especially if they're coming in, if they're a seasoned business that's coming in once a year, maybe once every 6 months. Just like your dentist tells you to brush and floss, we want to help our clients stay healthy from one visit to the next. So what happens if things don't go as planned in the interim? Do they have a contingency plan? What does their worst case scenario look like? This is one of the things that I usually talk about with clients is if everything comes crashing down, what does your absolute worst case scenario look like? A lot of times people will say, well, things are great right now. Why do I have to worry about that? Okay, let's back up. What does the worst case look like? If you can prepare for that, you're going to be okay. Do you have an emergency budget? I see a lot of people cutting back on things in their business, hurting their business when times get tight. Well, what we need to do is cut out the cable, cut out the internet, cut out the cell phones, cut out all the things that we're paying for, cut out the online shopping. For a while, let's keep the business alive. Can we prepare to mitigate any kind of risk? And the risk that comes could be that market risk is changing, people's tastes are changing. It might be that the economy is changing. It might be that my business, because of the type of work we do, just got riskier. Maybe people have a greater chance of getting hurt because of what we do. But what happens if things start going great, maybe even too great? Well, rapid growth, Good times create people issues. It's going to require policies and procedures and process and training and skills and oh my. And if they're not ready with these, if they don't have these, they could grow themselves out of business and be in deep trouble very quickly. Can they monitor how quickly they're burning through cash? Do they have a process for that? Maybe things are going so well that they're just spending and they're not looking at the money that they're burning through. And do they have the chops? Do they have the leadership skills to take this business to the next level? Sometimes business owners go to bed in a rowboat and they wake up on a cruise ship. Are they equipped to pilot the cruise ship? Maybe they were fine when they were just rowing. Maybe they were fine when they put a little outboard motor on that boat. Maybe they were fine when that boat got a little faster, but now it's a cruise ship. Are they ready? Or are they going to strangle the business to death because they're not willing to turn it over to a professional manager? Professional management, by the way, doesn't mean that they have to stop owning the business. It just means they turn the decisions over to a professional. Okay. We got a few more minutes left. I want to make sure we get to all your questions, but in general, your clients will arrive unprepared. You're going to give them all the things that we told you to send them. Hey, bring this to the meeting, do this before the meeting, help me, help you. They're going to still show up unprepared, just like the guy in the suit and the boxer shorts, no matter how much lead time you give them. I've also found that Parkinson's law comes into play here. Parkinson's law says that a task will eat up whatever time you give it. If you give them 2 months, it'll take them 2 months to put this stuff together. If you give them 2 days, they will have it together in 2 days. I tend to compress time frames. If I want somebody to do something, I'm going to give them a couple of days to turn it around and get it to me. If you give them a week, it'll take them 2. Give them 2 days, they'll get it done. Be prepared to work with them and imperfect information. You're never going to have perfect information. There are software packages out there that help business counselors that will put together financial projections and all of these really nice, pretty packages and graphs and charts, and they're useless because you're never going to have the perfect information to make them do what they're designed to do. Even if you think the answer is obvious, ask the question. Don't be afraid to ask the dumb question. They might roll their eyes, and then they're going to give you kind of a sideways answer that doesn't really answer the question. And just because you thought it was obvious, they thought it was obvious, you might both find that they don't have an answer for it. Invite them to come with somebody else. They don't have to travel alone. Let them bring somebody else in their life or in their business who is key to the success. 4 ears are better than 2. 6 ears are better than 4. People are going to hear different things. They're going to hear it in different ways, and they're going to be able to talk about this after. If they need money, everything you've asked for is going to be in the loan package. So everything that we're talking about here is going to put them ahead of the game. Everything here is going to end up somewhere in that loan package. Be prepared to give them bad news. Okay? If you're kind, you're going to tell them it's better for them if they stop smoking. If you're nice, you might go out and buy cigarettes for them. Okay, so you need to be willing to tell people what they don't want to hear because it's the kind thing to do. You do not have the skill right now that I can tell. You do not have the skill to do what you think you're going to do. Are you prepared to hire a professional to help you with that? Are you prepared to supplement things that you lack? Again, empathy is not the same as rolling over and letting people make bad decisions. We're going to empathize. We're going to be kind. We're going to tell them what they don't want to hear. We're going to tell them what they need to know. And then we're going to help them see what that baby really looks like. Okay? Because if you just jump right in and say, this is a terrible business idea, this will never make it, you've lost all credibility. That's the last time they'll ever talk to you. And they're going to go out and waste the money anyway. You haven't really solved anything. Be diagnostic, not prescriptive. And no matter what level of experience you have, you can do this job. Folks, I appreciate you spending the last hour and a half with me. You could have been doing almost anything today. And I'm really honored that you spent it with me. I'm going to turn it now back over to Brooke.
All right. Thank you so much for that incredible webinar, Russ. Folks, before you get going, I'm going to go ahead and launch the webinar feedback survey today. If you wouldn't mind taking a minute to complete that, that helps us at the NLC to know more of what you're liking, what's working really well, and it also draws attention to what you would like to see improved upon in future webinars. We really, really value your feedback, and it is anonymous, so feel free to be as candid as you would like. We hope you can join us for our next webinar. That is actually going to be next week on Thursday, on the 27th. This one's going to be about independent contractors versus employees and whether you're misclassifying your workers. That'll be presented by Lisa I. Perez. Registration's free, as always, folks. Feel free to access this as well as any of our other recorded webinars online. They're on our website, www.nativelearningcenter.com. We do have a Cathedral Webinars tab, and in there is a recorded webinar section. So you can click on any of the webinars that we've done for about the past 2 years, and you can feel free to view those, share them with your friends, share them with your colleagues. Please also check out our upcoming events. They're posted to our various social media. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn. We also have an in-house produced podcast titled The Hope of Thing, a Native American Podcast. On that, we discuss more focused topics within Native American housing and self-determination. Feel free to check that out. It's on Simplecast, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. And if you're somebody who prefers to maybe watch the videos with our guests, then know that we do post those interviews to our YouTube channel. All right, folks, once again, I do want to thank all of our participants for joining us today. Thank you once again to our incredible instructor, Russ, for this valuable information. I hope everybody has a fantastic rest of the day, and we do hope to connect with you really soon. Russ, it does look like you have a question down here in the chat. Where can I find information on SCORE?
Score.org. Score.org. Real simple to remember, and they've got a lot of great information on that website.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing that resource with the attendees. All right.
My pleasure.
All right, folks, it looks like there aren't any other questions coming in the chat. So once again, thank you to the attendees. I hope to see you next week on the webinar. And thank you again to Russ for the incredible information. I'm going to go ahead and close out the webinar, folks. Everybody have a fantastic rest of your day. Take care.
Bye-bye.